Welcome to Business Line's State of the Economy podcast, where you'll find insight, analysis, and the story behind the numbers.
Hello and welcome to State of the Economy podcast by Business Line. This is your host Abhishek, where I discuss the real estate trends. We have with us Mr. Gautam Saraf, the Managing Director, Mumbai and New Business at Cushman Wakefield. Mr. Saraf leads a 150-strong team of real estate professionals and he has been awarded as the Exemplary Leader Award by Asia's Best Employer Brand Awards in 2021. Welcome to Business Line podcast, sir.
Thank you, Abhishek. Pleasure to be here.
Sir, since if you can quickly run us through one of the trends that we're seeing in the Indian real estate sector today. I mean, we see the sector witness a strong growth. But there are some diversified segments also, which are now, or alternate segments, which are now witnessing some growth, be it logistics and infrastructure, warehousing, data centers. So if you can run us through that and what exactly is driving growth in these new sectors.
Thanks, Abhishek. Thank you for having me over. Let me take you back. India is in a high growth phase today in the range of 7% plus over the next couple of years. This will be the highest growth rate observed amongst the comparable advanced as well as emerging nations. Now, when we look at alternative real estate asset classes or alternate real estate asset classes, wherein data centers, industrial logistics are some of the asset classes. Let me break it up into three parts of industrial logistics, data centers, and draw some corollary to the 2020 sequence of events. Now, in 2020, during the pandemic, there was a supply chain disruption. And there was a need to bring in efficiency in supply chain. Retail went from offline to online. There was growth of e-commerce platforms. This led to the boost of logistics in terms of warehousing spaces across the country. This was around the same time in 2020, where the government came up with the production-linked incentive scheme for 14 sectors initially. Then they added others later. Now, those production-linked incentives from a factory output perspective started getting ready for delivery of output in the next 2 to 3 years. This we see, if you look at it from a logistics perspective, we realize there was a challenge in terms of supply chain. We had to bring in efficiency. The government, which was pro-business, pro-infrastructure, built highways. So the national highway, which had a capacity of 74,000 kilometers, today has a capacity of 146,000 kilometers. In the next 5 years, it will rampantly grow to about 2 lakh square feet, 2 lakh kilometers. This led to a situation where the demand supply from the logistics perspective was taken care of. Now, industries from an industrial manufacturing perspective, wanting to take advantage of the production-linked incentives, will start giving out output in the next 2 to 3 years. This 2 to 3 years output will get consumed locally, India being the largest population in the world today, everybody wanting a share of the wallet perspective, and will also be exported. A similar situation where Apple had an export of $1 billion iPhone from the country in Q1 this year. That product, which is getting manufactured in these factories, will require to be stored again into warehouses, which is where you will see the growth of industrial and logistics continuing in the same space. Now, the other asset class in this space is data centers. Now, prior to data centers, again, so logistics and industrial grew because of the Make in India initiative, pro-government policies from an infrastructure perspective, incentives for companies to set up shop in India and domestic companies to expand capacity to cater to the growth and consumption demand. Now, data centers traditionally was used for storage and transmission. Today, there are about 24 operators with 101 data centers across the country. The capacity, now prior to the capacity, data center, unlike real estate, which is measured in square footage or square meters or acreage perspective, is actually measured basis installed capacity in megawatts and gigawatts. Now, 3 years ago, we were under 600 megawatts of capacity. Today, India has a capacity of a little over 1 gigawatt. The demand for quality and reliable data is extremely high. Data centers also classified into tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, tier 1 data center is something like what you have in your office premises as a server. Tier 4 data center is something which has got the lowest downtime. So the uptime would be 99.995%, which is where the migration started happening. India is the largest consumer of data, which is 20 GB per person per month. Government thrust, which is the protection bill, the data protection bill that came in, actually led to a situation of keep in India. So anybody and everybody wanting a share of wallet from an Indian consumer perspective had to keep the data in India, whether it was leading to data from a forecasting perspective, trend analysis, it was data related to your financial data, social media, credit cards, which is where we saw this data center growth coming in. So compared to other economies, if you look at it from an industrial logistics or data center perspective, we are quite nascent on a per capita basis. Hence, we feel this growth will continue and sustain for the future.
So, which was actually the second part of this question was, is this growth sustainable in the long term? But I believe, as you said, it's nascent. So obviously it's a sustainable growth. Any numbers that you would like to peg there?
So numbers perspective, if you look at it, I can give you a perspective from a private equity perspective, investments. So private equity money in commercial real estate was very biased pre-2021 towards office and partly retail and residential. Today, industrial business, which comprises of logistics, industrial and data center, has 20% of the private equity money earmarked. In 2023, $9.9 billion was raised for investment. 72% of that money was earmarked for industrial and logistics and data centers. So that gives you a perspective in terms of the private equity money coming in. Now, the private equity money, as we both know, or any kind of investment money comes in from an investor, which is driven by the size of the opportunity in the market and the potential for market development, which is generally in high double-digit growth perspective.
So, which actually, if I may just elaborate on this point once and ask, we are right now, let's say, almost half year of 2024. Any trends that is visible in this segment right now?
So from a trend perspective, it's interesting. So one trend that we saw in Q1 of 2024 was $1.1 billion of investment that was raised. 57% of the money came in from domestic investors. So real estate is becoming an attractive asset class. Money is being deployed outside of conventional asset classes of residential and office. The domestic consumer is giving importance to these alternate asset classes. So it's a corollary you can draw to the stock markets, right? When the FII money goes out, the DII money kind of keeps the stock markets afloat. We are seeing a similar kind of trend in the real estate space today, that due to global uncertainty, wherein if the money gets pulled out of India perspective, you have a fair amount of share coming in from the domestic investors deploying money via the AIF route or the private equity money. The other trend that we saw was in the data center capacity. As I said, it is measured basis installed capacity in megawatts and gigawatts capacity. India today, from a 600 megawatts capacity, is boasting of over 1 gigawatt of capacity. 2023 saw 250 megawatts installation, versus in 2024, we are seeing 265 megawatts of planned installation. Industrial business, which was the, I would say, a distant cousin in the real estate space to an office asset class, is now rubbing shoulders with 50 million square feet of average absorption over the last 3 years. 2023 was a record year where 54 million square feet of space was taken up by industrial and logistics players. Gives you a perspective on.
One thing, when we're talking about data centers, it has typically been Mumbai and Chennai which has been driving the growth in India. Obviously, I understand it is the CMEV cable and the connectivity or the landing station issues that matter. But there has been some push from the North Indian states or the landlocked states. Do you see a prospect there somehow?
Yes. So like you, Abhishek, rightly pointed out, data center is driven by power and optic fiber connectivity. So the coastline had helped due to the international cable landing in Mumbai and Chennai. Today, if you were to look at any city in India with upwards of 500 megawatts of capacity, only Mumbai qualifies. So much so, thanks to what's happening in China, India is today the biggest market in Asia Pacific. Mumbai is the biggest market in Asia Pacific when it comes to data center installed capacity and under construction capacity. Now, to your point, the attractiveness of North India has improved significantly. It's a function of state-led policies, which is giving incentives to these data center operators to come and install their rack spaces within the state. After Mumbai, it was Chennai. By the end of 2024, we feel Noida would be rubbing shoulders with Chennai in terms of install capacity.
And any other state or region you would like to bank on beyond Noida?
So I feel after Mumbai, it would be Noida and Chennai neck to neck, and Hyderabad is catching up fast due to, again, government allotment of land to a lot of large hyperscalers. So data centers, just from a basic terminology perspective, also varies in terms of categories. So edge data center, for example, is the smallest data center, which has to be closest in terms of utilization perspective. So edge is required for Internet of Things. Now, edge data centers are planning to enter tier 2 and tier 3 cities also.
Right. So that is where it could be the future also.
That's where we see a lot of growth happening in the data center segment also, where tier 2, tier 3 markets like Lucknow, Jaipur, Kochi, where there will be growth coming in.
And sir, one of the final questions is on the broader question, rather, is on sustainability. That's something that's been often discussed now. The fact that ESG matters. How do the data center or these factors come into play for this alternate asset classes, be it a data center or the warehousing? How does this play out right now?
Built environment, as we call it. So real estate constitutes 40% of carbon emission, CO2, when it comes to built environment. Data centers globally consume 2.5 to 3% of the global demand for electricity, because data centers is very dependent on power. This demand for power will grow at the same rate as the capacity build out. So globally today, there is installed capacity of 32 gigawatts and planned capacity of additional 43 gigawatts. Now, the data center electricity consumption is measured basis power usage efficiency, which is called PUE. India operates at 1.6 PUE, which is similar to global levels. Singapore has set a very good example because they had stopped allotment of land or built out of new data centers. Today, they operate at 1.3 PUE, which is very efficient. Now, from an India perspective, we are the third largest when it comes to renewable power globally, which is where when corporates are going to lease these rack spaces from the data center guys, they are asking for their carbon neutrality plan, the utilization of green power, the PUE, which has to be lower than 1.6, which is where the play from a renewable power comes in. So in 2024, we will see sustainable commitments to attract clients who lease rack spaces with their compliance to ESG to remain attractive for their own corporate accounts.
Buildings have this LED certification. Is there something similar for data centers?
You're right. So in office buildings, you have LEED certification, which is now moving towards WELL certification, which is compliance to ESG. Corporate occupiers are asking landlords to become 100% carbon neutral on a committed date in a 5 to 7 year horizon. In data center world, it is PUE, WEE, UE. These are basically how the electricity consumption is measured by data center, how they bring it down from a global average of 1.6 to something like Singapore has done as 1.3. So that would make it attractive for corporates when they are leasing rack spaces from these data center operators.
Right, so that was all I had from my end, and I believe that was my last question too. Thank you for being on the show and explaining this entire concept of data centers, their growth and their overall journey in India. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you, Abhishek.